Inflation is a complicated but important concept in economics that refers to the general increase in the prices of goods and/or services in an economy over a period of time. It impacts the purchasing power of money. Purchasing power is the amount of goods and services you can buy with any amount of money. With inflation, each unit of currency purchases fewer goods and services than before. In essence, inflation erodes the value of money, affecting individuals, businesses, and governments alike. In America, when we talk about inflation, the first topic we cover is the price of eggs. We used to purchase a carton of eggs, 12 in a pack, for less than $4. Now we spend more than $9 for the same amount of eggs. But what causes inflation, you ask? Demand-pull inflation, cost-push inflation, and built-in inflation. Demand-pull inflation occurs when the total demand in an economy exceeds the total supply. In simple terms, it happens when consumers, businesses, and governments collectively seek more goods and services than are available. This imbalance drives prices upward, as sellers respond to the heightened demand by charging more. It is often described as too much money chasing too few goods. A good example is if you are selling something on Facebook Marketplace, and there are only 2 other people selling the same item. This item is in high demand, and all the influencers and news channels are recommending that everyone needs this item as the perfect gift for the holidays. Naturally, this will cause a flood of purchase requests for the item. You may also see people offer 2 or 3 times the listed price for the item because they are trying to incentivize you to sell to them rather than the other buyers. After the holiday season, the price of this item will not go back down to its previous price because the market has shown that they are willing to pay a high price for the item. Therefore, the new high price will be the new base price. Cost-push inflation arises when the production costs of goods and services increase, forcing businesses to raise prices to maintain profitability. Unlike demand-pull inflation, which is driven by excess demand, cost-push inflation is caused by disruptions on the supply side of the economy. This type of inflation often leads to a reduction in the economy's overall output, as higher production costs can discourage production. Let's consider what it takes to make our breakfast cereals. The main ingredient is wheat flour. In the West, we tend not to care where the resource comes from as long as we can purchase the cereal at a bargain, and it is the brand we like. We were surprised when the war started between Ukraine and Russia and learned that Ukraine was the major producer of wheat used in the cereals. As the war progressed and cereal producers had to source new sellers to purchase wheat from and at an affordable price, the price of cereal started going up. The cereal producer started passing their additional costs to the consumer. Built-in inflation, commonly known as wage price inflation, occurs when inflation becomes embedded in an economy due to a cycle of rising wages and increasing prices. It stems from the perception that prices will continue to rise over time, leading workers to demand higher wages to keep up with the cost of living. Businesses, in turn, raise prices to offset the increased labor costs, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. In simpler terms, it means that when workers negotiate higher wages to counter rising living costs, businesses often respond by increasing the prices of their goods and services to maintain profitability. This fuels further inflation, prompting workers to seek even higher wages. This cycle is unsustainable because prices will keep rising perpetually. That is why most countries have a central bank whose role is to propose monetary and fiscal policies to keep inflation at 2% annually. Economists use several indices to measure inflation, with the Consumer Price Index, CPI, being one of the most common. The CPI tracks the average change in prices paid by consumers for a basket of goods and services, including food, housing, transportation, and healthcare. Another measure is the Producer Price Index, PPI, which examines the prices producers receive for their goods and services. Inflation reduces the purchasing power of money, making it harder for people to afford necessities. For those on fixed incomes, inflation can lead to financial strain. On businesses, the rising costs of materials and labor can challenge businesses, especially small enterprises. However, some sectors, like real estate, may benefit during inflationary periods since the property values increase, making the return on investment attractive. For savers and stock investors, inflation can diminish the value of savings. Investments, on the other hand, may outperform inflation if they generate returns that exceed the inflation rate. While moderate inflation can signal healthy economic growth, high inflation or hyperinflation can destabilize economies, creating uncertainty and reducing investor confidence. Managing inflation is the job of governments and central banks, such as the Federal Reserve in the United States, play a crucial role in controlling inflation. Tools like monetary policy adjustments, including altering interest rates and controlling money supply, help regulate inflation. For example, in America during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Federal Reserve Bank reduced interest rates drastically to incentivize people to go out and shop. The idea was that by reducing interest rates, consumer spending and investment will increase, which will stimulate the economy. We want a healthy economy because it creates jobs and keeps prices of goods and services competitive. Inflation is a double-edged sword. It can indicate economic growth when controlled, but wreak havoc when left unchecked. Understanding inflation's causes, measurement, and effects is essential for individuals, businesses, and policymakers. As economies evolve, striking a balance between inflation control and economic growth remains a key challenge. Deflation is the opposite of inflation, and it happens when the overall prices of goods and/or services in an economy go down over time. At first, this might sound like a good thing. Who would not want cheaper prices? But deflation can actually create serious problems for an economy. Deflation is caused by lower demand for goods and services. When people and businesses spend less money, demand drops. For example, currently most households are cutting back on making big purchases like large electronics and cars because we fear that we are going into a depression. This results in increased supply of goods and services. For example, the local car dealers are running aggressive promotions to get foot traffic back in their stores. One good benefit from deflation is that it can make a country's currency stronger. If a country's currency becomes more valuable, imported goods become cheaper, which can also lead to lower prices overall. That also means citizens of the strong currency can vacation for cheaper, which is good, but the increased demand for luxurious goods and services will inevitably lead to inflation. Inflation and deflation are tightly linked, and it is a delicate job trying to balance them. Hope you found this content informative. Let us know if you have other questions on the topic and we can create videos on them. Check out our other videos to learn more about how to become financially free.